But if they made the movie today, it'd be like climate change.
Look what's going on now. We're sending how much to Ukraine?
So here's a guy had erectile dysfunction long time.
No fighting in the war room.
He says, I think we should launch everything we have right now and catch them with their pants down.
Okay, this makes more sense.
This is the war room. He'll see the big board.
Oh yeah, this is a comedy.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Shane Schuldmeyer.
And I'm Fred Satilli.
And this is The Real Generation Gap. Last week, Fred and I reviewed the movie Oppenheimer. And if you haven't seen that review yet, please check it out. After our review, Fred said to me, now Shane, if you want to see what happened culturally a few years later, you really need to see a movie called Dr. Strangelove. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, was directed by Stanley Kubrick in 1964. This black and white film is something I once discussed in college, but I didn't pay much attention to it. After viewing this film again, I have mixed feelings and emotions and don't really know whether I like it or not. I'm hoping Fred can help me sort this out.
Well, I don't know if I can sort out whether you liked it or not, but I want to start talking about every little thing.
Sure.
And the first thing that happened in this movie is the incredible ballet of refueling a B-52 bomber from the 50s with 50s technology while in flight.
Yeah, so in my initial viewing of this, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen the same thing in a Mission Impossible movie or something along those lines where it's refueling in the air. And I remember when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's cool. So when I saw this movie, I was thinking, you know, this was shot in the 60s. It's like, okay, first of all, the fact that they're doing this is crazy. Secondly, the fact that they're filming it is like, takes it to another level. That must have been so technically difficult.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a big deal just to make those opening scenes. And then the movie starts. And Slim Pickens, the actor Slim Pickens, is the bomber pilot. He's in there. And these bombers are in the air 24 hours a day protecting our country from atomic or nuclear attack from the Russians. Now, they get a go code. First of all, the amount of devices that they show, the complexity of the B-52, there's all this gauges and dials and wires and hoses all around and everything, and these really crude analog devices, things are going click, 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 and the go code comes for all-out nuclear war against Russia. And Slim Pickens doesn't believe this. He wants to confirm this. He gets out of his seat. He goes back into the thing and looks at it himself. Can you imagine that?
I mean, no.
And then once he realizes that he's got first of all, it's confirmed. Before the system goes dead for security, they confirm this. And he goes back up and he realizes we're going to have, the way he puts it, toe-to-toe nuclear combat with the Ruskies. And when he says this, he takes off his helmet and he puts on his cowboy hat.
Yes, sir. It's ready for action.
Right. The real him. Now, the real him is going to do this. Up to that point, he's conforming to everything. But if this is going to be a fight to the death, I'm going to be me. And the fact that it's Slim Pickens and the whole audience knows who he is.
Yeah, so I didn't know who he was. And after I watched this movie, I looked into the cast a little bit more. And then I realized that he was a bigger actor back in the day, but he typically played the same role.
Right.
Yeah, and so Slim Pickens is his stage name, correct?
Right, yeah.
And he's typically a cowboy type.
And that's really his only name.
Yeah, okay.
You know, that's
how he's known.
Right. So, and he says, I don't even imagine if you'd be human if you didn't have some feelings about all-out nuclear war. So these kind of giant, broad statements are huge. And then he says, if this is important as I think it is, he's going to drop atomic bombs on two different targets. He says, when we get back, there's going to be citations. Who cares, right? There's going to be citations for you. And you got to realize this is in '64. This is Kennedy is dead. Johnson is there. They're trying to do the Equal Rights Amendment.
Yeah.
So he says to the crew, there's going to be a rewards and awards for you regardless of your race, color, or creed. So the timeliness of that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the aspects I was missing when I watched this. I was watching it at work. People were interrupting me while I was, doing other things. And I didn't really think about the historical aspect, what time and place this was taking place in. And now that, I'm talking to you a little bit and I looked into it a little bit more, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes more sense. And then, I kind of had to realize, oh, this is a black comedy. This is very deep in satire. And that didn't come to me initially. But now that I'm looking back, I'm like, okay, this makes sense, that makes sense. And like what you just said about the race, color, and creed, I heard that line, I was like, okay, whatever. What is that?
Right.
Let's continue on.
But if they made the movie today, it'd be like climate change and
exactly.
equity and this kind of stuff. The audience would be seeing this.
It was very much playing on what was going on at the time.
This is why I told you after Oppenheimer, if you want to get a real taste of America at that time, you have to see this.
Okay, and it makes sense now. Yeah.
Now, the bombers, they're on their way, and there's a lot of them, right? There's like 50 bombers with these targets. They're going to wipe out Russia. And in Washington, D.C., everybody becomes aware of this pretty quick. They see that these bombers, the bombers live at the fail-safe point. They're ready to attack these targets in 2 hours, and they're moving towards them. So they make a call to the guy, the Joint Chiefs of Staff guy, which is General Turgidson. And all the names that they pick they're silly names, right? And General Turgidson is George C. Scott. Now, one of my favorite things about that is that he went later on to play Patton in Patton, but at that point they hadn't made Patton yet. So here's George C. Scott, and the Washington, D.C., the president's office calls him at home, and his girlfriend is there. She answers the phone, and she's his secretary, but she's on a tanning bed.
Buck, should I get it?
And this is, at that time, the decadence of Washington, D.C. Right now, tanning bed, people have them in the regular home, whatever, somebody will pop for one, but at that time, it was a big deal. So she's in a bikini, so in '64, that's very risque already, and she's got the eye protection on, and she answers the phone. Now, when she answers the phone, the guy who called her, she's familiar with him. So she lowers her voice and she goes, "Hi, Freddie, what's going on? Why are you calling?" And he says, "I need to speak to General Turgidson. He's in the bathroom." She says, "Well, he's indisposed right now." So she's working, right? She knows this guy. She's calling him familiar by the first name.
See, I didn't pick any of that up. Not at all. I thought that they lived together. I thought that was a regular bed. I thought it was two separate beds because, old movies, they couldn't show people in the same bed. I didn't pick any of that up.
Right. Way different scene. So she calls him to the phone. Now, he gets to the phone, he realizes what's going on, he really is the general. And back then, it's not like Milley or something. These guys were military people. They knew the bomber group. He says, well, call the commander, the base commander, Ripper, something, Jack Ripper, Jack D. Ripper, right? What perfect name. Call General Ripper and tell him to get those bombers back here and send them the recall code or whatever. And now he has to face a problem that many people may not realize or understand, and this is obviously not all, so we don't want to get into the all trap, but a great many times there are power struggle between women and men. So he says to this girl, I have to, it's the night. He says, I have to go, my president needs me. She says, I need you. So now he's put in this weird position. And this is, in society, half the audience is nodding their head. Like, I've been there. I get that. Now, he goes in there, and now you see the war room, and this is the war room.
Yes, it is.
Right? It's spectacular. These are the big boards, and all those dotted lines are bombers heading into Russia from all different places. And as the movie goes, you see like another dot appear, like they're getting closer. And he goes in there, and he is confronted by the president. And the president is played by Peter Sellers.
Yes.
And
Peter Sellers plays more than one role in this movie. And I didn't pick that up till probably 3/4 of the way through. I was like, wait a minute, is this... So he plays the president. Mm-hmm. He plays Dr. Strangelove, though we haven't got to him yet.
Right.
And he plays... what's his name?
Lionel Mandrake.
Mandrake. And
Right.
we haven't met him yet either.
We haven't met him, but he is General Ripper's exchange student. He's a British officer from the Royal, the Royal Service, Navy or Army or whatever, and he's there. So he's in the room with the psychotic lunatic that launched an all-out nuclear war and will not tell him the callback codes. So one of my favorite moments in the movie is where now the president is confronting George C. Scott, General Turgidson, and he says to him, I thought only I could launch this nuclear war. And he says, well, we had some legislation a few months ago that you signed, right? He blames somebody else, right? We had some legislation that you signed in case something happened to you, we wouldn't have a gap, an authority gap. And gap is an important word. And in the early 60s, not only was there a generation gap, but everything was a gap. There was military gaps. There was, we have a weapon gap or a food gap. There was always a balance of power, and a gap was realized. So it was a word that they used. Okay. So he says, I thought only I could launch this attack. Yeah. And General Turgidson says, I don't like to make any characterizations before all the facts are in, but I think at this point we can conclude that General Ripper may have exceeded his authority.
Yeah. And it was until that line, I was kind of like, what is going on in this movie? This is so weird. And then in that line, I realized, oh yeah, this is a comedy. Like, this is supposed to be funny. And until that point, I wasn't really clicking for me. And then my perspective kind of changed. I was like, okay, this is super silly. And so that was a really good line for I got that joke.
That's good, yeah. And that is how DC is right now. When you see these things now, Ted Cruz interviewing Mayorkas or something, everybody makes these broad statements where they assign somebody else the responsibility. That's really not my department. That's, and they escape without any responsibility. So here's the general. He's saying this. So the president says, well, we have to put a stop to this. This is all-out nuclear war. And then another thing happens that's really good. When they realize that they can't get the callback codes and that this is happening and they don't have a way to stop it, General Turgidson says, 1, we have this problem. 2, we have to realize that they're going to retaliate with everything they have. 3, we have to act before we stop that. 4, he says, I think we should launch everything we have now and catch them with their pants down.
He's so gung-ho. It's freaking hilarious.
Right, he's the hawk.
Yeah, he wants to fight.
I think we stand a damn good chance of catching him. He says, 90% victory, we lose 100, 200,000 civilians tops.
And that's so applicable today. You know, look what's going on now. We're sending how much to Ukraine just to provoke war. It's sad, but it's hilarious at the same time. This guy is just like, let's bomb the heck out of them. Let's
nuke them.
Yeah, we'll be okay.
They invented nuke them.
Yeah,
exactly.
I
mean, this is what he wants to do. So the president decides to call in the Russian ambassador, and the Russian ambassador, fantastic acting job. I'm not sure who the actor is, but he is the sinister guy, right? And right away, he's got a spy camera, and George C. Scott sees that, and they get into a fight. Yeah. And then your favorite line in the movie.
That was my favorite line. No fighting in the war room.
Yeah, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Fighting in the war room, yeah.
Right. And so they have a struggle over that.
So, okay, do you think... So at the end, obviously, we see the other spy camera. But do you think the initial one was planted, or do you think the first one...
No, he would never have brought the spy camera to plant. He didn't know the ambassador. He said, you can't even bring the ambassador here. this is the war room. He'll see the big board.
The big board,
Right?
yeah.
And the president says, we have to stop this. We have to contact the president of Russia, the premier of Russia, and we have to inform him, and he has to shoot down our planes, right? So then another scene that I really loved, and this is just a joke that they interjected, but it was so great. There's food all over the place. They got a giant banquet in the war room, and the Russian he's turning his nose up on thing, and he says, bring me some fresh eggs and bring me some cigars, Havana cigars. Well, we can't get them in America. And another ambassador, American, says to him, you ought to try these Jamaican cigars. They're really very good. And the Russian says, we do not support the work of imperialist stooges. And he goes, oh, right, just commie stooges.
Yeah.
You guys are going to the Cuban.
It took you explaining that, at the time this was a big deal for me to get that joke. Because it just went right over my head as well. I was like, okay, Jamaican cigars,
great joke.
whatever. Like, it didn't make sense to me. Right. But now that you explained it to me, when we talked about the movie, it makes so much more sense.
Right, like why did they include that? But all of America loved that.
Yeah.
Because they called the guy a stooge. They called Fidel Castro a stooge, And believe me, the people, they went crazy. When this movie came out, there was so much truth. People were going, there, see? I mean, it was bigger than, these documentaries we have now.
So was this a movie you saw in theaters?
Yeah.
How old were you?
Yeah, 9.
Were you really?
Yeah, well, see, my father was a combat veteran in World War II. He was in a submarine in the Sea of Japan. So I really grew up in a red, white, and blue way.
Okay, and you went to go see this with your family, or?
Yeah, my dad and mom and
Cool.
and an older brother.
Cool, and they liked it as well? They were laughing?
Talked about it for days and days. And
okay.
It went around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So
this kind of makes fun of the military. How did your family perceive that? Your dad wasn't like angry that it was kind of playing games on the military?
Not at all.
Okay,
Not
he liked
at all.
it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, because it's the truth.
Yeah.
And every one of these things, even Buck Turgidson, the general, while this is going on, he gets a phone call in the war room, once again from the girlfriend. And he says, I told you never to call me here. And my president needs me. He says, I need you. So that power struggle. So in addition to, there's nuclear holocaust coming, but he's got to deal with
this girl, yeah.
And it's,
And man, that's so relatable to today. Like, especially, I would say even more so, because now we all have cell phones in our pocket, and your girl can be texting you, blowing you up.
Empowered girls.
Yeah.
Empowered.
Blowing you up. So that was pretty relatable. Yeah. That's funny.
Really blowing you up.
Real quick, let's get back to the cast. We were talking about a little bit of the actors. One of the things I noticed right off the top was James Earl Jones was in this movie.
Yeah.
And for me, he's a really big person in my life, from Darth Vader and Mufasa.
Oh, of course.
And so I didn't know it was him from his face right off the top. I knew it was him from his voice.
Right.
Because that's, yeah. But,
Luke, I'm your father.
Yeah, and back in that opening scene we were talking about, he's there, obviously. But I wanted to touch on the song, When Johnny Comes Home Marching, or When Johnny Comes Marching Home. What was the perspective at the time of the song? Because for me, it kind of portrayed like, okay, this is like the soldiers, the blind, doing what we got to do, to the drum, like whatever the commander says we're going to do. That's what it portrayed to me.
You're so right.
Blind patriotism.
Yeah.
Is that what it was at the time too? Is that?
And dig it in a movie production's perspective. Mm-hmm. This is the theme song of the B-52.
Yeah.
Every time
shot,
they show the B-52,
I liked it though.
Military thing, right?
And it kind of kept it driving. Yeah.
It's from 1863. The song. Mm-hmm. It's from the Civil War.
Yeah.
But the fact that they have that music and that added attention, right?
Yes.
That you knew that the military thing was happening because that music really added to that. And there was no really other music in the rest of the movie, was
Not
there?
really, no.
Isn't that interesting?
But I picked that up so quick. And I don't even know where I've heard that before, probably some other war movie, but instantly it put me in that like, oh, we're going to war.
Right.
We're going to war.
Right.
And it's almost engraved in my head that way, you know?
It's a marching
Yeah, it definitely.
Yeah.
And going back to the cast, kind of, my question throughout the whole movie was, who is the protagonist? Is there a protagonist? What are your thoughts on that? Because I couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
Everyone kind of seems like a bad guy.
The protagonist is morality.
Okay.
Right? We have a moral problem here. Mm-hmm. The fact that we're all going to die is a practical problem, but the way that we're all going to die is a moral issue. Now, when you talk about the cast, Sterling Hayden as the psychotic general, let's talk about him. First of all, it's a Kubrick movie, and it's black and white. So whenever there's a moment of tension, it's a frozen shot. It's just his face, and he's got the cigar, and he's got this grim look on his face, and the way the lighting is, it just makes him look like the mummy's curse. You know, all those still shots, there's 3 or 4 of them throughout the thing where you realize that there's nothing breaking his psychosis. His psychosis is complete. He's committed unto death. And so those shots, those are classics. Those should actually be like on a poster. Now, I wanted to talk to you about this before we even started this, but did you understand why he launched the all-out nuclear war?
So that, again, went way over my head. And then when I was looking at your notes a little bit, I'm like, oh, okay, it's making more sense. It's coming together, but you can go ahead and explain it, yeah.
Okay. He said that the Russian commie plot, and everybody said, you know, kill a commie for mommy. That was back then. They said the commie plot was they were going to poison our precious bodily fluids with fluoridation.
Like, what does that
fluoridation.
I didn't get it at
And
first.
it was going to damage our essence, and we would no longer have purity of essence. And then the British commander that was with him is trying to, the guy's a psycho. The British commander is trying to get the callback code this whole time. He's trying to get into the mind of this guy to find the soft spot. And
he even tries to leave at first, right?
Right.
He tries to leave, and he's like,
I'm out of here.
He's like, you're not going anywhere.
And he tries to talk with him, and he says, when did it occur to you that this purity of essence problem was a serious enough problem for all-out nuclear war? And that's when once again, he says, oddly enough, it happened in the process of making love. I just didn't have what it takes because my purity of essence. So here's a guy had erectile dysfunction long time. You know, that's how crazy. You know, he had he couldn't perform. And he's like, it's a Russian commie plot, it's fluoridation, we have to kill them all.
That also went way over my head. Sidebar. Have you looked into fluoridation and any of those conspiracy theories and
I
stuff
remember
like that?
when it was instituted.
Okay.
You know.
What do you mean by that? Give us details.
They told us in real life, they said, we're going to fluoridate all your water so you have better dental.
Okay.
And
even
people
though you're
really
consuming it.
People had jacked up teeth. But it's fluorides in toothpaste. So they said, well, we're going to put it in the water, and the water, you know, and this will help you and everything like that. And there was a big controversy at the time. And, you know, it was just the way it is now with our idiotic issues, our non-issue issues. People immediately started drinking purified water and rainwater. And he says, did you ever wonder why I drink nothing but rainwater and pure grain alcohol? And
So what do you know what year they started saying we're going to put fluoride in the water? Do you have any idea?
When I was young, you know.
Okay. So it was very fresh at this time.
Very topical at the time.
That's cool. That's funny.
For some people, that was the issue with the movie.
Oh, really?
It was like, you see, you fluoridate the water, the generals go crazy, and they launch a nuclear war.
Yeah.
We got to stop this.
Okay.
So people had that, just the way there's like all kind of deniers of things now.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how that worked. Now, at that point in the movie, they're trying anything to call back these bombers. And so the president says to another military man, he says, send some troops in there and capture this guy and get the callback code. and General Turgidson says, this base is on lockdown. The phones don't work. The president can't call this guy.
He locked it all down.
Right.
He executed his plan.
He's got the place complete. So he tells this other general, get some guys, go in there and capture this guy. And General Turgidson says, well, you have to understand that these guys are going to resist this. They're going to have weapons. They're not going to let you march in the front gate, you know. Yeah. And the other general goes, I think my boys could pretty much brush them aside. These are American troops.
Yeah, Americans versus Americans.
My boys could pretty much, we don't have too much trouble. And they actually attack the installation.
Yes.
You know, and you see where the psychotic general's got a 50 caliber machine gun inside his golf bag. Yeah, he's got the bullets and everything.
And he has Mandrake feeding him.
He's standing in the window, blasting. Good shooting, soldier. He's completely off the deep end. So when he sees his, and this is such a great line, when he sees that his own men surrender, when Jack the Ripper, the base, is now going to be infiltrated by these guys, he says, I can't believe my boys stopped fighting. They didn't fight to the end, because he's in this to the end, right? I can't believe that they stopped fighting. They're like my children. And Lionel Mandrake, played by Peter Sellers, he says, don't worry, General. I'm sure that when they were being killed out there, they were thinking of you. You know?
That's funny. Yeah.
So anyway, and that's another great character that came in there was Keenan Wynn. Now Keenan Wynn has been like in 100 movies. You've seen this guy a lot of times, but he was the guy who actually, the military guy who actually got into Jack Ripper's office.
Okay, the guy who shot the Pepsi machine, the
Coca-Cola machine, right?
The Coke machine.
And he was Bat Guano. That was his name.
Oh,
Bat Guano. Lionel Mandrake says, Bat Guano, if that's your real name.
Yeah.
He says, I have to call the president, but all the phones are dead. And I'm doing this out of sequence now, but I'll get right back to why. He says, I have to call the president, and the phones are all dead, but they find a regular phone booth. Now, most people don't know what a phone booth is, but he finds a phone booth and it's still working, but he needs change. He needs coins, and he doesn't have enough. He says, I'm trying to call the President of the United States. And the operator says, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And he turns to Keenan Wynn and he says, blast open that Coca-Cola machine. There's going to be coins in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Then he's like...
What does he say?
I don't remember word for word. You probably do better. But something along the lines of...
That's right. Yeah, you understand the consequences of your actions here. I'm not going to be responsible for this. You are going to answer to the Coca-Cola company as if, right? This is, once again, nuclear holocaust is coming. So anyway, he gets through to the president. He gives him the callback code. But the thing that I did out of sequence is when the people in the military base surrender, and it's obvious that the base will be infiltrated, he says to the British guy, were you ever captured a prisoner? And he says, yes, I was in Japan. I was a prisoner of war. And he said, did you talk? And he said, no, I didn't talk. I didn't even think they wanted me to talk. They just liked beating me up, you know. And he says, I don't think I could stand up to torture. And he says, oh, you know, I don't think there's going to be any torture. And the general, Jack the Ripper, he gets up, he goes in the bathroom and shoots himself.
Yeah.
Right? So now the launch code...
it's gone.
The callback code is really gone. So he starts looking at the stuff on the desk and he sees all this POE for purity of essence and all this kind of stuff. And
it's like his notes, right?
Right, he's making like a crossword puzzle.
Notes,
Right, the psychotic general. He calls the president and they have the callback code and they call back the B-52s, but unfortunately... they get through to all of them, except one of them was damaged by a Russian rocket. Just damaged. So they can't call them back.
And it's the one with Earl Jones in it?
Yeah, Slim Pickens.
And Slim
James
Pickens.
Earl Jones doesn't even have a speaking part, does he? Does he say a word?
He says he talks a little bit.
Oh, right, because you heard his voice.
He talks a little bit in the beginning, I believe.
Yeah. But that was really cool that they had him in the movie even then, because he had not become a star yet. He was just another actor, you know? And
but
I don't know.
We cut back to them in the plane, and that guy's still like, "No, we're gonna finish our mission. We're gonna drop this bomb if it's the last thing we do."
Well, that's the thing. He says, there are people back home that depended on us, and by God, we're not going to let them down.
Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, everyone's trying to get them to come back. But...
Now, speaking of actors that that were in there, Shane, probably you didn't notice it. There was a guy named Shane Rimmer.
I did not.
He was one of the actors in the movie.
I did not. The character was Shane Rimmer, or Shane Rimmer's
the
an actor?
actor's real name.
Okay, I did
so
not know
how
that.
many Shanes do we know?
I've known like maybe 2 my whole life.
Right. So here was one. But anyway, so now I got a problem. The B-52 is going to go to these targets. It's hit. It's running out of fuel. And all they want to do is do this, but it's damaged from ground fire, right? A rocket detonated near it, and the shrapnel and everything caused all kind of havoc. So Slim Pickens is determined to drop this bomb. And the plane is damaged, the bomb bay doors are closed, and they can't open them. And he literally, and this thing is flying like 100 feet off the ground.
They're flying super low at this point.
Right, they're under the radar.
And they're avoiding radar too, which like they can't find out where they are, yeah.
Right, and then another great line. The president says, "Can they fly this low?" And he says, these pilots are trained to fly just off the ground. The exhaust from their jets frying chickens in the barnyard. Like, once again, he's all excited. Right? He's proud. And he still wants to do the all out. When they draw everything back, he's like, like this. So they get it going. Now, in the meantime,
in the war room.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back in the war room, right? A strange character appears.
Yeah, I'm going to need you to clarify a lot of this with me because a lot went over my head on this part.
Okay. The Russian ambassador, well, before this part even, the President of the United States, when he calls the premier of Russia, he's childlike. He's drunk.
Yes.
He's womanizing. Yes. He's crying.
Yeah, so he's trying to call Russia, let them know, hey, some guy went nuts and there's nukes on their way to you. Let's sort this out. And then the Russian on the other side is drunk, and then they kind of bicker back and forth a little bit, and that was actually really funny too.
It's a childish conversation. He said, "Now, Dmitry, calm down, Dmitry. Yes, I love your country. No, I didn't. No, this is not my fault. No, I like calling you. I don't just call you when it's a disaster, right?
Yeah,
he's got to go through all this, and in your own life, we get people on the phone." And you have to treat them like children in order to get them to do what you want them to do or to not do what you don't want them to do. But all those scenes take place, and they're beginning to look at it, well, if one of these bombs is dropped in Russia, there's going to be damage and we're going to be sorry. But, well, now the Russian ambassador introduces a very strange man in the story, and that's Dr. Strangelove. And Dr. Strangelove, at the time in America, we had Project Paperclip. We got all these Nazi scientists, and we brought them here, and we had them work, on the atomic bomb, right?
Yeah.
In the beginning with Oppenheimer.
Sidebar real quick. At the time, how did civilians view that? How did you view it?
They didn't know.
Oh, we didn't know at the time.
No, Paperclip was not known.
Okay.
Oh, isn't that something?
That's crazy.
It's not in your experience.
It's crazy.
So,
and this was the enemy. This is literally who we were fighting, and then they're just going to bring them in.
Well, we captured them.
Yet we're worried about commies the whole time, but we literally brought the enemy in.
We needed their mind.
Scientists.
Now, there's another aspect to this whole story that you don't realize because of your age. And that is, in 1964, we were in an actual kinetic war. We had our soldiers, that people from our neighborhood that we knew, were going to Vietnam and being killed. And I, when I turned 18, would get a draft card, and I might be conscripted and go to war. This is a reality for every young man when I was in junior high and high school. The potential, so you're thinking, well, you want to go to college, you want to start a business. Don't even think of that yet. You have to survive potential military conscription, and they don't do that anymore. Did you actually get a draft card when you were 18?
It was required to sign up for the draft to go to college.
That's right.
But yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have a draft.
No,
so,
thank
but
God.
then they did.
Yeah,
Literally,
absolutely.
people in my neighborhood,
I have uncles who were in
some
Vietnam.
enlisted before they did. The top 40 songs one year, like in '67 or '66, was the story of the Green Berets. Okay. It was the fighting soldiers from the sky. The country was focused on this in a heavy, heavy way. So the Russian ambassador says we can't allow the nuclear bomb, even if it's just one small rocket, because the secondary target was just a missile launch zone. It wasn't a civilian area or anything. It was just to take out retaliatory missiles. Yeah. And he said, we can't do this. And he said, I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Strangelove. And now this is the Nazi scientist in a wheelchair. He's crippled up. He's in a wheelchair. He's got a strange accent. He's got a strange view on life. He's really a weird cat.
He's got, what is the disease? I looked it up, but where his hand acts on its own, he has that.
Right.
What is that? Do you know what it's called?
I don't know what that's called.
Okay.
Right. He has a limb that he's not in control of.
That's where the editor will put it in right there. So yeah.
Good. Hopefully,
right
yeah,
here.
yeah. We'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
But this guy rolls up in the wheelchair and he says, the Russians, because they can't afford the arms race, decided to create a doomsday machine, something that if there was any nuclear war anywhere, that this machine would destroy the entire world. Yeah. And this would stop everybody. Now, Oppenheimer wanted to stop everybody. Yes. He was like, when they see how awful this is, they'll never have an arms race. Yes. But now they had the arms race. So this was the Russians because of the economic problem, and that is how we took them down eventually, if I am phrasing that in the best possible way. But they created this thing. And Dr. Strangelove says, this only works if everybody knows about it. Why didn't you tell everybody? Yeah. And he said, well, the Russian premier was waiting for this holiday to make the announcement. Yeah. And he said, well, you're in a situation now, if this one thing goes off, 1,000 nuclear weapons are going to go all around the globe.
That all is going way over my head. I wasn't picking that all up, but okay, it makes sense now.
Right. This is the end of mankind. Yeah.
So they talk about a fail-safe, no? And then they say the fail-safe, there is no fail-safe, but there is.
This is automatic.
Yeah.
There's no stop button. You can't pull out the plug.
Yes.
So the president is confronted with a no-win situation. But Dr. Strangelove says that the nuclear winter from all these explosions isn't going to happen instantaneously. It's going to take time for this incredible cloud of debris to block out the sun and kill all animal and plant life, right? He says, but if we go deep into our mines that are 1,000 feet deep and we take food and supplies down there for 100 years, we can repopulate our country and there's potential for 100,000 people to be selected and taken into this kind of thing. And you see the politicians like, well, we're going. Yeah. And Dr. Strangelove even says, obviously the politicians will have to be taken down so that they can lead the nation, as if, right? A completely devastated world.
He says, we're going to be taking 5 women to 1 man.
I think it's 10 to 1.
Or something like that, yeah. And then the Russian guy's like, I like that.
Yeah. And George C. Scott and he, who never agree on anything, they look at each other like, this sounds good to me.
Meanwhile, the general's like, well, what if the Russians come up before us and they kill us all before we come up, right?
That's right, and that's where the gap that I mentioned in the beginning of the movie comes in, because back at that time, everything was a gap. We had a gap, a generation gap, but we had, supply gaps, funding gaps, everything. You had to be on top of everything, otherwise there was a gap. And he says, I think the first thing we have to do is address the mine shaft gap. Maybe they have more mine shafts than we do.
So he's all getting all into it again.
Right back into the crap.
Yeah.
Right back into the political crap, right, just as bad as it is. So a fantastic thing happened during the shooting of this thing. And what the sequence that brought this on was Slim Pickens finally got the bomb bay door open.
Yeah.
And he finally jumped up and down on the bomb and got it to eject.
See, that was my only memory from college of this movie, was this scene right here, where he jumps out on the bomb. He's riding like a bull or a horse, and he's got his hat on. Yeah,
he's got the cowboy hat. He's yelling "Yeehaw" as he's traveling down.
Traveling down on the bomb.
And that was a ground level. If you notice, that was a ground level detonation, right? So he traveled all the way down, and of course, when that blast went off, it triggered the doomsday machine, and hundreds of nuclear bombs exploded everywhere. But then the greatest thing happened. You want to tell them what?
I like your impersonation of it.
Well, right at the moment the bomb hit, Dr. Strangelove stood up out of the wheelchair and said, "Mein Führer, I can walk!" And then, the Holocaust hit. Now, the reason that I just love that more than anything is because he didn't realize when they were shooting the thing, he forgot, and he stood up accidentally. And then he looked around, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, this idiot stood up." And to save the scene, just because he is a great spontaneous comedian, he looked around, and everybody went, "Mein Führer, I can walk!" And then that was the end. So they saved it. That was an unscripted thing.
Yep, and they left it in there.
And so that was really a great thing.
That's a fun way to end it, too. Such a black comedy. That's a fun way to end one. And then you said the music at the end, right?
Right. The one other piece of music in the whole thing was "We'll Meet Again on Some Sunny Day." And as the credits are rolling, it's this happy song about, don't worry about what's happening now. Someday in the future, we'll meet again some sunny day. Just to add the ultimate irony to the end of the movie. So I'm really glad you watched it.
Yeah, it was something I saw. I don't even think we watched it in college. I think they just made us go over like scenes or clips, or we talked about it or something. So yeah, it was my first time going through it the whole time. I had seen A Clockwork Orange before, and I did not like that movie. And I think the reason I didn't like that movie was because there was no protagonist. Again, right? I kind of see it as a trend. Everyone's a bad guy, kind of. Was there a protagonist in that movie? I don't think so.
No, there
right?
was no hero.
There was no hero.
That was once again, the government gave him a drug.
Yeah.
And it made him into a victim. He was a psycho killer.
Mm-hmm. And I need to go back and watch that movie because I think I would like it a lot more now.
It's pretty upsetting. Clockwork Orange is genuinely...
I saw it, I was probably like 21 or something with my girlfriend at the time, and it just went, I didn't like it. But I think I would like it a lot more now. But anyways.
I think so too. See, and this is why I'm so glad we're doing what we're doing. Because this is really fun for me, and to introduce these movies to you, and also the way you don't have a context for some of this stuff. I don't have a context for some modern movies. I go to some modern movies, I don't understand the characters. They're doing things that aren't in my experience, because I don't do whatever weird ghetto stuff. There are jokes and expressions and stuff that what does that mean? Yeah. I mean, just the first time I heard jelly, I was like, somebody's like, "I'm so jelly."
Oh, like, that's even a little dated.
Oh, that's way dated now. It's 10 years old now. But the first time I heard it, it was like, I'm missing something. And that happens to me a lot. Some bunch of people saw some idiotic movie. And they're all quoting from it, and I'm out of the loop.
You're like, you don't get it.
I'm out of the loop,
So, do you think this movie is relevant today? Do you think if, let's say, they brought it back to theaters, do you think people today would like it, or do you think it would not hit?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Because the context is so difficult.
It is, but I feel like once I realized, because at first, like I said, I didn't realize it was a comedy. But I feel like, if people knew it was a comedy, I think
first they need to watch this show.
Better yet, do you think
then go look? Everybody, this is it. Dr. Strangelove. This is my own personal copy. I'm very proud to have this.
I'm surprised it's not a VHS.
Right. Yeah. It's actually a DVD. It's not on a cassette.
Not a Blu-ray.
Right.
Digital
although
download.
I have that, but
Do you think? Okay, here's a different idea. What if they remade it today with today's?
Nah. It's such a masterpiece. The visuals. Everything just the way it is. It's got to be. It can't even cut one word.
Yeah.
It's got to be just the way it is. I think it's really a good thing for everybody to see. Like a lot of movies, the context, like I just said, I have trouble with today's context.
Yeah.
You know, there's all kind of movies out there that appeal to different people that aren't me.
Yeah.
And
like you said, it was a great follow-up to watching Oppenheimer. Like,
right.
It went,
right.
Because Oppenheimer was it was a drama. It was so serious. And this really did put me in the perspective of culture at the time. And like I said, when I first saw it, I wasn't in that mindset, but I quickly adapted it, especially after talking to you.
Good, yeah. So anyway, I think, I recommended another one. That's a movie called The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. Mm-hmm. Same thing, hilarious movie, nonstop jokes. But once again, it's the dark comedy of the Russian invasion and how America responds to the Ruskies or the commies. Mm-hmm. It really was a big thing then. And so I guess that's our review.
That's our review.
That's a review. I give the movie a 10. I don't know what you think, and I frankly don't care.
So I give it a 6.5 today. It was probably a 10 back in the day. But yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough.
All right, well, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching The Real Generation Gap. Again, I'm Shane Schuldmeyer.
And I'm Fred Satilli.
And make sure to check out our other reviews that we've done so far. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And stay tuned for our next one.